Diablo 4 Loot Reborn has come out and people are going rabid for it. I'll throw this screenshot up so you can see how many people have come back to the game just to experience this. Twitch is blowing up with more viewers than ever on Diablo 4. People are excited for it, people want to experience it, and people want to know, is this the update that saves Diablo 4? Is this the update that makes this game great again? Is this the update we've all been waiting for? So I jumped into a new season last night and experienced it myself, and I gotta say, it's too little too late. Now granted, I only experienced an early set of the game because I started a seasonal character. My logic was a lot of people haven't played this game in a while, so they're going to want to create a new seasonal character, start over fresh and really experience the game from start to finish, rather than picking up where they left off when they quit the game because it just wasn't fun. And the problem is that while Loot is reborn, they made a whole bunch of changes to the game. I'll flash a few of the changes up here in the screen so you can see them. I'm not going to read them all off because there is a lot of changes, and there is a lot of quality of life changes that are amazing. But the problem is that those quality of life changes don't change the core aspects of the game. And now that all those other things that were bothering us, like not being able to run in town, not being able to determine between salvaging or keeping an aspect, now they fixed all those little things and all those little annoyances, you're left with a game that's still boring. And that's just the cardinal sin of any video game, right? Like, a game can have bugs, it can have issues, it can have problems, it can have balancing things that need to be fixed. But if it's boring, it's just boring, and it's not fun. It's not worth playing. So why is it still boring? Well, we still have the core aspects that haven't changed that are just as frustrating as ever. The biggest one for me is build diversity. When I was going to jump back into the season, the first thing I needed to do was look up a build, because I knew that I couldn't just make a character how I wanted to make them. I couldn't just play around with things that I wanted to play around with. I would get stuck in level 1, maybe level 2 tier if I didn't do a build guide. So that means I had to immediately look up build guides. Okay, what's good for leveling? What's good for endgame? What's good for when I want to do the pit or when I want to do challenges? And that's just not fun, right? I shouldn't have to research a game before I want to play it. I should be able to just jump in with any class I want to and enjoy the game. And I know that I can't, because I've played every class and I've played every season. And I've learned through that if you don't follow a guide to start with, you're going to have a miserable time leveling. Things are going to get too hard. You're going to hit walls. It's going to be a frustrating experience, and that's just awful game design. You shouldn't have to do research before you jump in the game. You should be able to play what you want, how you want to. I love the Barbarian. I want to play the Barbarian. Every single build I looked up for the Barbarian was having between 2, 3, 4 shouts and maybe 1 or 2 active abilities, which means for the next 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 hours, however long I decide to play, I'm going to be jamming 1 button, maybe 2 to deal damage, and then hitting those other buttons every 45 seconds to a minute to activate shouts. That's boring, unengaging gameplay. Now, they did up the amount of spawns, and they did allow us to do Hell Tides at low level. As you can see here, I'm level 6, I'm in a Hell Tide, and there is a ton of enemy packs, and that feels like it should be cool. Like, you've got a ton of enemies on the screen, you got these overwhelming odds, you've got tons of fodder to take down, and yet here I am, again, I'm just jamming Corpse Explosion to blow everything up. I'm not even paying attention half the time, I'm literally looking at my cell phone or doing other things while I'm playing because this is just so boring. And Blizzard acknowledges that it's boring. They've massively increased the leveling speed this season. A lot of people are reporting that after just 1 day of play, they're level 50 to 75, with some streamers already hitting level 90 within 1 day of playing. That's great to see because the leveling is boring, but you shouldn't even have it then. If the leveling is so boring that everyone wants to skip it, and you've made it irrelevant because now everyone can level up in about 10 hours and get past the leveling, why even have it in the first place? If you acknowledge that it's boring, if you acknowledge that it's unfun, why would you keep it there? This isn't how a good game should be. A good game shouldn't be, well, you've got to spend 10 or 20 hours doing boring things, but after that, you get to finally have fun. That is garbage way to design a game. And even though I've played every season, I've never made it to max level because it always gets too boring before I get to max level because the gameplay loop is not fun and engaging. Now, part of that, granted, was because the way you used to get loot was awful. That you'd go back to town every 30 seconds, have to compare everything and figure out, is this better, is this not? And on that angle, they did do much better. I only went back to town in about an hour of playing. I think I went back to town twice. So there is much less loot. And in theory, that's supposed to be fun because what they're saying is that now when you get loot, it's actually going to be, meaningful choices. But it doesn't feel as great because, like, Diablo 3, for example, it was fun to blow up a horde of enemies and the screen would be filled with legendaries and greens and choices and different things like that. And now it's just like, there's a couple items on the ground after killing 1,000 enemies. Yeah, some of them might be better, but it just doesn't visually feel as cool. There's no loot pinatas. It's just boring. I came back with such high expectations because everyone thought this was going to be what the game was supposed to be. And it is what the game is supposed to be. This game should have launched in this state with all of these quality of life upgrades, with all of these changes, with how the leveling is. All these changes are individually good. I'm not saying they're bad. This is definitely where the game should have been. This is how Diablo 4 should have launched, but it's too little too late. For most of us, we've played through a couple seasons. We've experienced the characters. So what you're saying is do it all again with slight improvements to loot, with a little bit better quality of life on like potions and picking up items, and we don't want to because the core gameplay loop just isn't fun. And I think had the game launched in this state, we would still be at this moment where I'm at a little bit later, maybe a few months after launch, where people were like, yeah, this is great. The loot feels good. I'm glad they have these updates. I'm glad all these quality of life things are in here. This is really awesome. But it's still just run into a horde of enemies, jam one button until they all explode, pick up a bunch of loot, look at it and see if the numbers are slightly higher than my other numbers so that I can do slightly higher numbers so that I can destroy things faster to get loot that gives me slightly higher numbers so that I can do it all again slightly faster. And don't get me wrong, I'm motivated by leaderboards. I am a competitive person. I enjoy playing games competitively. I want to get to the pit and compete on that leaderboard to see if I get in the top 100 or the top 1,000 for the greater rifts or the pits or whatever they're calling it now. I love competition and I love competitive games. But I don't want to spend 30 hours doing something that I don't enjoy just to be able to compete. That's not fun. I would rather just start at the pit at level 1. I would rather just start on the leaderboard right at the beginning. And since, again, we've acknowledged that leveling is not fun, Blizzard knows leveling is not fun, why not just get rid of it? Why not just start at level 100 at the pit so we can start competing immediately? That would be a huge improvement for me because then at least we have that competition going and I feel like, okay, I'm competing for something. I've got other people I'm competing against at lower levels or whatever. If we start level 100, it's fresh in the season so we don't all have gear. There's a lot of things they could have done to just get us right into the fun bits. And again, they've acknowledged that the fun bit is at the very, very end, but no one wants to get there. On top of that, this season is the lightest season we've ever had, and they're basically saying that we didn't focus on the season because we were remaking the entire game. So, the season's gonna be meh, but the entire game will be better. But now that people who play seasonal, like I do, like I said, I think a lot of people were going to come in and play seasonal, experience a new character for the first time, basically have a cop-out of a season, which means people who don't enjoy the Eternal Realms, like me, are going to have to wait another, 2, 3, 4 months to have a chance at a season that makes something interesting for the game again. And again, that just sucks. And I think the reason why a lot of us critics are so harsh on this game is because all of us loved the old Diablos. Most of us older gamers grew up on Diablo 1 and sunk countless thousands of hours into Diablo 2. It was something magical, it was something great. Maybe we're nostalgia chasing, maybe we'll never think anything will be good as Diablo 2 because we were growing up, it was a different time of our life, we have nostalgia with it. Maybe we just don't see the game as fun because nothing will ever be as fun as our memory of Diablo 2. I acknowledge there might be some bias there. But I never looked up a guide for Diablo 2. I did have the strategy guide, but I never looked up how to build a character. I just made a character and built them how I want to. When I got legendary items, they were exciting. I was like, oh, what's this going to do? What's it going to do? In Diablo 4, there's legendary items, certainly, but it's like, I don't really care what it's going to do because chances are it's not even going to be the right thing for my build that I have to have. And even if it is, there's only a slight chance that it's going to be an improvement over what I have, so why should I care? And if you have never played the game before, I definitely would encourage you to play it, right? If you can get Diablo 4 on sale for like $10 or $20 and you've never experienced it, I think it's worth a playthrough once. The story is meh at best, the music good, the design is fun, like the art is fun. So I think you could have fun for 10 or 20 hours for the first time in the game, playing all the different classes and getting to see what it is. But that's what it is. It's gonna be 10 or 20 hours of fun for 10 or $20, which I think is a good deal. I don't see many people sinking more time into that. And I think everyone's going to come back for this season. They're going to say, "Oh, this loot is so cool," and then they're going to quickly realize, but everything else is just the same. And we're going to see the massive drop off that we saw in Diablo 4 before, because everyone's going to say what I'm saying, that the core gameplay is still the same. It's still the same old game with a fresh coat of paint. Now, had they dropped this with the DLC, with their expansion, and added, a couple new classes, a new area, new mechanics, and things like that in there, in addition to everything else, I might not be so harsh on it, because at least then there would be something new to experience. But again, that's only a band-aid solution. That's going to say, okay, there's something new I'm going to experience, I'm going to play a new class, I'm going to have fun with that. But in the end, it's all going to turn into the core gameplay loop that's not enjoyable. It would buy maybe 10 or 20 enjoyable hours out of the DLC, and we'd be right back to where we are, complaining about the core gameplay yet again. So in conclusion, it is too little, too late. We'll see a bunch of people come back to Diablo 4, but they're all going to leave. Fundamentally, I think most people are going to be in the same boat I am, which is, at this point, I'll play a season every now and then. I might be buying the DLC whenever it comes out, but at this point, we're just hoping for Diablo 5, and we're hoping that it is much, much, much better than Diablo 4.